TE Talks with Guides is a weekly podcast for lovers of history, travel, and all things Italian. Welcome back, everybody, to TE Talks, sponsored by Through Eternity Tours. I'm your host, Rob Allen, and on TE Talks, we get to talk with some of the most fascinating people who make a living out of being wonderful storytellers. Today, we are finally being able to start what I've been wanting to do for so long, is to get out of Rome and to talk from some of our guides who work in some of the other magnificent cities of Italy. And we are going to start today with Venice. Today, we have Giovanna joining us. Ciao, Giovanna.
Ciao, Rob. Hello, everybody. Good morning.
How are you doing today?
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
We know things that are going on, but we won't get too personal about stuff. But we're all dealing with stuff during the pandemic still. But I wanted to say that today you've brought up a subject that I thought would be very, very interesting. That you're not only going to talk about Venice, the city, but Venice through the centuries, how it dealt with the plagues, and how Venice is unique in so many different ways, but even its approach to dealing with plagues in general was something that was quite different. So that's what we're going to be dealing with today, correct?
That is absolutely correct. Thank you for this lovely interaction. Thank you for inviting me to this podcast. So yes, I thought it would be an interesting subject to deal with, not just again because of this very specific moment we're all globally going through, but also because it's related to the history of the city, the trading, the cultural history, but also the geography of Venice, which is the first thing that comes to mind when you think about Venice, a city built on water. So it's really a way to get to know this place and to understand it.
Okay.
In the sense that, everybody knows that thanks to Shakespeare, but also in general, the Venice was a city of merchants, merchants at sea, okay, and therefore very exposed to epidemics. But again, we will see how we managed to make the most out of our very peculiar environment to protect our republic and our city, the heart of the republic, from pandemics.
Okay, now, just because I forgot to bring this up, because I wanted to just mention what the subject was going to be, of course, I want everyone to get to know a little bit about you first. I long to meet you directly in person, but we have been interacting when you were our first guide who we have been working with in Venice since we started working in Venice in about 2019. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, who you are, what is your experience, etc.
Okay, I am a tour guide now, but I was trained in London as a graphic designer. I think I spent something like 10 years in London in between university and working for Channel 4. What else did I do? The Observer magazine, a few artistic things. But I have always known that my home was here. So at some point I came back and I kept working in Italy as a designer, but I was missing dramatically listening to other languages, speaking other languages. It was like, if in a way you couldn't breathe. Sure. And then I had my two kids and it was getting very annoying having to commute, because Venice, you will see, is like... well, actually, maybe some of our guests and viewers, I don't know, but it's logistically a little complicated. So at some point, about 10, 12 years ago, something like that, my dad told me, well, why don't you study the history of Venice, and become a tour guide? And I tried, and I realized that was the way to go. Fell terribly in love with the job, and that is it. So that's what I've been doing since. And thanks to you, since what was it? You said 2 years ago. It feels like ages, but it's just 2 years ago. It's not because I'm talking to you, but you are really giving us the opportunity to work in the best possible ways, with this customized tours and long, so to go beyond the superficial,
Level.
taking pictures and all that our guests, I'm sure, know very well.
Absolutely. And I also wanted to say that you are great also with families. You have 2 children and you have another one on the way during the pandemic. So this is great news. But I think that's something that you've excelled at. And people can tell even now, probably just listening to us, what kind of enthusiasm that you have. And I know from a fact that, Venice is a place more so than maybe many other cities really opens up when you have a professional guide to take you through, really can show you something beyond the tourist path. So I can't wait to meet you, but now I can't wait for us to talk about Venice during the times of epidemics and pandemics, I guess we could say. So let's roll into it.
Okay. So, as I was sort of saying at the beginning of our chat, Venice is a very beautiful but also difficult place today, and we have to imagine even more at the beginning of the history of the city. Sorry, in the sense that it's a city built on water, on artificial foundations, and also built on salt water, which is, if you think of it, very, very bizarre and makes we keep drinking water just because we've been chatting for 5 minutes. Imagine these guys, building an entire city, sticking the tree trunks in the mud and building everything from scratch, literally. I think at this point it would be cool, or I generally try to show people like a map, of the Laguna that shows how we are really in the heart of these, again, I call it a womb because of my little baby, perhaps. But anyway, it's like a confined area where the water is very shallow. So the Venetians somehow through the years and the centuries managed to really control and make the most out of this area with the shallow water. They used it as a starting point. They built very unique ships, with a very flat bottom. So the gondola that everybody knows is just the development of these fisherman boats and the galleys. They had this very, very, very flat bottom. So only the Venetian ships were able to navigate inside the shallow water, the shallow channels actually of the lagoon. So it was a starting point to go and not really conquer, well, sometimes conquer, yes, but also to trade, not to organize exchanges. That Venice was also for its cultural and political independence from the rest of the world, that we are still very proud of. Sometimes even, it's ridiculous. But anyway, it doesn't matter. We are still proud. Anyway. So they were independent, so they were able to trade with every possible culture and people in the world. So you have to imagine how many connections we had. And if we know of, if we think of pandemics today, where do they come from? Unfortunately, connections. So they are the two sides of the coin. Many ships from the east and from the west and south and north all met here. What I found very interesting when I was reading about it were the ways that the Venetians looked for, to preserve the food and the goods inside the ships, using spices with antioxidants and special properties, to keep away rats. But unfortunately, it didn't always work. So we know that since the 14th century, we had these horrible little animals, jumping on the ships and coming to visit, and their fleas brought plague. And that is just an example. So the the environment helped because in the southern lagoon, which is where the port was up until the 16th century, the mid 16th century, there are plenty of tiny little, how do you call them, islands, okay, that were used as monasteries, but also as islands of confinement. So since the mid 15th century, we invented actually lazzaretti, so quarantine, isolation places for people and goods. By the way, the reason why I wanted to talk about this subject today is because tonight we are finally, because last year it was cancelled, but finally tonight we are going to celebrate the end of one of the worst pandemics in our history, which is the 1576 plague. And we celebrated with amazing fireworks and everything in the Redentore, the Church of the Redeemer, which is again in the Southern Lagoon, in a big island, so the Giudecca Island, and it's still very, very spectacular and recalls all the history that is behind this celebration.
Lovely, that's amazing. Sorry, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
Okay, I don't want to just go.
No. But I mean, it's really it's fascinating.
Okay, so basically, in the Southern Lagoon, again, there are plenty of tiny little islands, some of which are haunted, apparently. As
really?
If you look, well, no, I don't know. You have to ask people in the US because they sent Ghostbusters here to look for ghosts. But anyway, Poveglia is quite famous in the States because of these Ghostbusters. Next to Poveglia, there is Lazzaretto, San Servolo, and other San Clemente, Sacra Sestola. So each one of these little islands, up until, I don't know, my grandparents or whatever, so maybe after the Second World War, the 60s perhaps, were used as departments of hospitals to heal and to confine, obviously, and to heal people with different contagious diseases. Again, because they were little and confined. In 1300, we have the first example of we call it confinement, although it's not has not much to do with healing yet, which is in Lazzaretto, actually, for an epidemic of leprosy. And it's interesting because in the Senate documents, they mention the fact that they want to hide these people that look very disturbing, disgusting. So they want to tidy up, hide the dust under the carpet or whatever, make the city look fantastic and push away these guys. And that is the first example. Then in 1348, we have this very, very nasty epidemic of plague. So the same island that starts being used for the people with plague. And then in 1423, the Doge Francesco Foscari, who is is a little bit like Napoleon, a very tough guy, very ambitious and everything, but also with an eye to sort of public health, and a special attention also to this aspect of society. And so he decides to, again, build or organize in this Lazzaretto, which comes from the word Nazareth, which is the island nearby, a proper place of confinement. So you have to imagine the port of Malamocco, ships that would arrive, and if there was a sort of alert that had to be declared because the captain of the ship had to sign a document certification, no, saying we're all good. If he didn't and mentioned some issues or whatever, people and products had to be left in the Lazzaretto Island. So actually, like here we had like last March, April, whenever we had to leave home, we had to sign a self-certification or whatever. Well, actually, this system was invented by the Venetians, and apparently everybody laughed at them. They were like, I can say whatever I want and whatever, just as we did, no? Because we were sort of making fun of this funny piece of paper, like useless piece of paper. But anyway, it was invented by the Venetians. But anyway, the fines were so strict in case you how do you say you signed the wrong thing, you lied basically. They were so harsh on you that people didn't lie. So they started realizing that it was actually a way of controlling. Plus, as they entered the port, they had to show like a special flag if there was an alert or something. And so the people on the big bell tower would see, and they would, of course, alert the population. So yeah, and a few years later, a few years later, they basically realized that they couldn't have just one island for people that were clearly ill, people that were suspected to be ill, and the products that were contaminated. So they decided to use two islands, Lazzaretto Vecchio in the southern lagoon, but also Lazzaretto Nuovo for the suspected patient or ill people in the Lazzaretto Nuovo in the southern lagoon.
Wow. So to go over this, you're basically saying that Venice was always known. I mean, it became so important because it was trading with so many different people from all over Europe, probably also from Africa. Eventually, you have Asia Minor, especially with Constantinople, now called Istanbul, because that I know was the end of the Silk Road, which I found fascinating. That's the reason why, I mean, even not only Venice, but Amalfi, Genoa. Oh gosh, then there was another town, Pisa. Pisa were the four major ports that had lockholds with the Turks and everything coming from the Far East. And so, but you guys, probably more so than many others, even these ports were all kind of isolated as well, with mountains more, except for Pisa. They realized that this is the opportunity for diseases that started to come up. And so the Venetians devised a system where people would be set into quarantine. Initially, it was created for unpleasant visual diseases like leprosy. Okay. And then you're saying, okay, we have in an aggressive way to devise, probably because of examples of what had happened. They knew the potential of what could happen. They said, okay, you on your boat, the captain understood that if they saw any signs of any kind of disease, anything that was not right, that they would have to advise people. And as you were saying, that people could, like in Italy, we had to have a piece of paper saying that we're signed, okay, but what's to stop us from lying or denying? But they would create fees for you if you were found guilty of harboring somebody with a disease. Interesting. Can people visit these islands, Lazzaretto Island and the other? Yes,
so they can visit Lazzaretto Nuovo, and it's actually quite interesting because you have this very, very long structure where, again, people were kept like a big room. They probably had like a bit of straw on the floor or something, and they left drawings, marks and dates and stuff. And now they are restoring Lazzaretto Vecchio, which is even more interesting. And we have a special connection to go and visit it, soon, as soon as they open. So we are going to be part of the organization of the restart of this.
Oh, that's really lovely. Do you have any idea when they're planning to open it?
Well, it was meant to be last year.
Okay.
It was meant to be last year in September, and it hasn't happened yet. But the problem is funny. The problem is the ponton. How do you call it? The place where the boat has to approach because the water is too shallow there. So they are building a new one where it's a little bit deeper, and it's taking forever.
Uh,
But fingers crossed, maybe this is September, but of course, as Through Eternity is going to be the first to know.
oh, great. Yeah, that would be very exciting because as we know, like, that Dylan and I will be coming up in September to do finally the tea destination Venice. That would be great to be able to see if possible.
Indeed. Okay, I'm gonna save the date and write it down and try to get you there.
Okay, so we have these issues now. They're placed on these islands, and I don't know if people understand even that the word quarantine comes from Italian for quaranta, meaning 40 days, or a quarantina, because like you have in Italy, I always love ora, un'oretta, so it's like 1 hour, but actually it's a little hour, so it's a little 40 days. Maybe make it less hard to listen to it. Una quarantena, so they have quarantine. So that's also interesting is how you talk about, because, now that I've known you and you are doing a virtual tour for us on the Venice, the city. You've done one also for the history of Carnival, and also one that you've worked on about the Jewish quarter of Venice. But it's interesting because it seems that, Rome has a lot of ancient or, traditions, holidays. But I don't think that the Romans themselves kind of celebrate these holidays as enthusiastically as from what I hear about how you talk about celebrations of the Venetians, because you're always saying, oh, well, this. So today there is a celebration of this church. And you said that they're going to have a huge firework celebration, probably more so than now. It's probably going to be very, very big, seeing that we faced a pandemic.
Yeah, well, yeah, the point is that we still have loads of visual things that relate to this bit of history and these events, and so that makes it a really, really enjoyable and brings it to life, if you see what I mean. Actually, another thing that I didn't mention, but that is just an example along this line, is some of the art that is related to pandemics and the prevention of pandemics at the Scuola Grande di San Rocco, for example, or the magnificent Chiesa di San Sebastian Church. They all have the function of keeping away the virus and the diseases, and one can go there and still see in place this amazing art that really makes you feel like you were living in that period. And as far as the Redentore, the Redeemer, is concerned, again, it's exactly the same. So we still have the same landscape that we had 500 years ago. We have fireworks that, again, existed 500 years ago. A wonderful theater set, we could call it. And so it's very, very attractive and enjoyable for us to, again, live it again. I remember when I was little, we used to have like to decorate our boats, but our little boats, and all go in Canale della Giudecca. So exactly in front of this beautiful Palladian church. Okay, so you are literally surrounded by this beautiful church with a big pontoon bridge, all the boats are decorated with lantern, with grapes, with flowers, you name it. It's like a big carnival on water. Behind you, you have St. Mark's Square and the Chiesa della Salute, another gigantic church built for another how do you call it, a massive celebration for the end of another epidemic of plague in 1630. Okay, so you're literally surrounded by light, by colors, and by this idea of relief, we could say, no? And I think that because of for Venetians, going by boat at night with no traffic, no engines, no water buses and stuff is like something that makes us feel like the city really, really belongs to us. You can make the most out of it. Then we like it to, keep celebrating in the traditional way. I would say that, and now, they organize like a bigger boats. So if you plan it ahead a little bit, it's also possible to attend these parties, even if you don't have your little sandueto or your little things. But they have gone a lot trendier, like with proper meals and dinners. Whereas again, when I was little, we would cook pasta e fagioli, like pasta and beans, and I don't know, rice, something like that.
Sure, of course, because Venice is fascinating. These things are developed because Venice did not survive on tourism by any means for the centuries, but now that is the major part of the economy is tourism now. So I'm sure they would want to make these quite exciting. I was like, we need to write a list of all the main festivals where there's something to celebrate. So when we have people coming, we could say, oh, by the way, there's this festival. Maybe you'd like to participate in it.
Indeed, because not many people do it. So sometimes people arrive and they're like, oh my goodness, there is fireworks, and they didn't know before. And so they're not organized. Like, for example, tonight we need a green pass. So, to go around and stuff. And many people are like, oops, I didn't know. How can I get it? And then they miss opportunities. Like in the middle of the night, you start hearing boom, boom, and like, oh, what's going on? So, yeah.
It's so funny. I also like the point of what you're talking about taking not motor boats or electric boats and going out there. It's a recent thing that I've been kind of really interested in is illumination throughout the times, because of, and the Hippodrome of the Colosseum area, the lamps that they show that the Romans used that almost look like these Alibaba lamps that are beautifully decorated with, olive oil and the wick. And even in the catacombs, that they had the same things that they would place. In fact, it was a way for people to find their way back out because there would be series of lamps that were in the shelves that they could light. And then they would visit their loved one, and then they could follow that back out again because the lamps themselves would last for about an hour or so. I imagine also when I think of Venice at night, I think it's actually a pretty dark city. It's not dangerous by any means, but you don't have that much of an illumination. It must be really interesting because it brings you back to the past, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think so. Some people are actually a little disappointed, for example, when they go through the Grand Canal, because only some of the big and beautiful palaces have got lights on, but we don't really, like, it's not like London on the River Thames, right, where you have, colorful lights and things like that. We go very basic, and but I think it's got a special charm, and it's also interesting, I think, to walk at night, walk around, as you said, walk around the city. Sometimes kids want to do like ghosts and legend tours, but it sounds silly, but in a way it does bring you to a dimension that we are no longer used to, with the little street lights. And sometimes you see, like, for example, the E19, the street names, the street of the assassins. So it makes it very scary, although it's not scary at all.
Of course. It's such a fascinating place. Now, just to remind me, because I think I was on your tour of the carnival that we were talking about this, or I may have been talking about it with somebody else, but like sometimes these characters that were people dressed up in, And one of them was Pantalone, the Commedia dell'arte, and that's, I think, also derived something connected to the plague, because it would have these long masks to breathe.
Yes, because actually that is another epidemic. It's like the 1630 plague, where people were sort of expecting medicine to be more precise. Okay, after they had invented teriaca, which I don't know if you know about in Rome, we were again very proud of this panacea, this medicine that was supposed to heal every possible problem in the world. Okay, based on viper flesh. Okay, but after we invented the teriaca, that was like a magic. Okay, we also invented these masks. Not exactly appealing or cheerful, with a huge, well, you see them in every shop, like in every mask shop, and now it's become like almost traditional, with the long beak that was filled with herbs that made the air smell good, and therefore you had the impression that the air was cleaner. So the plague doctor could go closer, not to the how do you call it, to the person, to the ill person, but not too close, because of course it keeps it at a safe distance. And it's funny because he also got the little how do you call it, glasses, and all that make it look like a little bit like like maybe like a pantalone, like a bit more severe in a way, and a stick that he would use to make the bubbles of the plague explode. So yeah, I think because he's such a serious and stiff character, unlike Arlecchino and Colombina and so on, then it evolves in the figure of this sort of pantalone guy.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Well, that means, so we're basically talking about all of these ways that they have created to try to guarantee the safety of the city. Was it successful in general? I mean, it's inevitable that they couldn't prevent it from always happening, but you would say.
Yes, because like in particular, in between the 16th and the 17th century plagues, they were, and also actually also after the 17th century plague, there were other epidemics in Sicily, in Milan, well, in the rest of Italy and in the rest of Europe, that didn't affect Venice, or that only marginally affected it. So, I mean, we did lose a lot of people. That is one of the reasons why we struggled so much, especially in 1600, in the 17th century. We struggled so much from many points of view. Political. You are weaker if you have less inhabitants, no? But at the same time, I think, did as well as we could. Compared to other places in Europe, in particular, Venice managed to somehow protect itself. We have to also recognize that Napoleon did something good for us, because, for example, one of the reasons of contamination, the means of contamination, was the fact that we kept cemeteries in town. So there was, the spreading of the virus out of the graves if they were not sealed properly. And he, in 1797, was the one that decided that folks, leave it behind, move the cemetery in a separate island. So after that, we were sort of completely fine, but from pandemics in general. But they were overall quite efficient ways of preventing diseases.
As many things that the Venetians do. That's interesting that you say it about Napoleon, because he also did that in Rome, because he created the cemetery, Verrano, instead of saying that the burials were going on inside the churches. he's kind of going along with what the ancient Romans did. And it's a wonderful cemetery. When you come to Rome.
I will soon.
It's gorgeous. We even did it in one of our videos. We pointed out some because they have 19th, like early 19th century portraits, frescoes of some of the dead, and they're really rather large and quite wonderful. Then they stopped doing that tradition. But I would love to also visit the cemetery in Venice. I know it's a specific island. That would be interesting. So you talk about great inventions that the Venetians do. I know that they created the mirrors that we have today. I don't think people ever realize the gallery of mirrors and stuff are something. I guess the idea is that Venice was unique, and how they approached many things on many different levels. It was an environment where artwork was beautiful. The light is incredible there. They had access to materials to get wonderful colors for the paints. They were inventive on dealing with creating objects that the rest of the world coveted. These are all things that helped it in its power. And I think this is a wonderful way to start our introduction into Venice, to show how unique it is. I mean, just always listening to you and the other guides of the group. It's so special. And I think it's just so much. And I think we have a great opportunity with the podcast to talk about that in many different levels. So I wanted to thank you for talking to us about the plagues and how Venice addressed the plagues and the celebration today. And can you say again the name of the festival, what it is called? La Festa di?
Redentore.
Redentore.
The Redeemer. Yeah, the Church of the Redeemer. Actually, let me just say one thing that I lost along the way, but that makes it that brings to mind this particular event and relates to something that everybody knows. The Bridge of Sighs, okay, that is quite famous, was also built right after this 1576 pandemics, because previously the prisons were only inside the Doge's palace. As a matter of fact, with some of our guests, we went to the secret itineraries of the Doge's palace, which are now reopened officially for tiny little groups. But they are horrible. If you're claustrophobic, you really have, this feeling of being literally trapped in a labyrinth without any windows, because you are in the gutters of the palace. And obviously there was no air, there were no windows and nothing. So diseases spread very, very fast amongst the prisoners, but also among the rest of the politicians, ambassadors, and so on. So in 1576, they go like, no, folks, this is not a very good idea. Let's separate. So on the other side of the canal, they build the prisons with larger windows, forms of precautions that we all know today. And the very famous romantic bridge is just the connections in between the two palaces.
How amazing to go, the connection from there to the prison. Probably the Doge was happy not to hear people groaning and screaming.
As well, indeed. Couldn't sleep at night.
Obviously, especially by night. Oh gosh, there's so many things. I have to write a list of all these things that I think we can all talk about in Venice. I'm like the politics, the Doge, the artwork, the artists. What a wonderful place. I so look forward to meeting you in person, Giovanna, because I know that we've been able to, fortunately, out of some positive things, that we've been able to develop a wonderful relationship with you and the other guides from Venice, and the rest of our groups have all been connected by doing these virtual tours. And that I will also promote that you guys do the tour of Venice, a virtual tour, and you will have the Jewish Ghetto, I think, probably come out in the winter time.
I'm thinking of September, when people start staying at home a bit more, when Federico is, sort of.
Federico's a good name. So everybody, just to let you guys know, I was in very much a rush. Giovanna's been very kind, because she is supposed to be, her due date for giving birth to Federico is next week, right?
Indeed. I show you the big belly.
Oh, Che bella. Mamma mia. It's so funny because it's like non dimostri. It's like from your face up, because I guess you're like one of these lovely people. You don't get any weight in your face at all. You can't tell from when I'm looking at the Zoom until you stood up that it's like, oh yeah, she's pregnant. So we're all having dates. Like you said, what was the dates? That's what's
22nd. 22nd, but we agreed that we wanted the 24th, right? He decides. It's up to him, but
that's right, because you're also a Leo as well, no?
Right? Yeah, but in a month's time, so just about a Virgo.
So you're on the cusp of being a Virgo, whereas 24th, which is my birthday, is the cusp of with Cancer and Leo. But that's great. So yeah, I'm going to be hoping for Federico to be born on the 24th because it's a great day. Giovanna, thank you guys. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing you and Federico in September.
See you soon, Robert. Thank you for this opportunity that makes it a cheerful day. So grazie mille.
Bacione.
Ciao. Ciao, ciao, ciao.
Thank you for listening to our TE Talks with Guides. We have a new episode every Wednesday. Please subscribe to get an alert when each podcast comes out. Rate us and tell people how you enjoyed it and share it on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Most importantly, if you enjoyed it, send us a feedback about the show. Also, if you are curious about what some of these people and places we talked about look like, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and watch the video on this podcast where we have inserted special images for you to further enjoy the story.